podcast. My name is Carrie Houchins. This is the initial episode of the KarebearKorner. This podcast is going to be dedicated to women in gaming. Just kind of the overall theme and goal that I have here is so that we can learn from each other. We can hear each other's stories. We can kind of, grow an empathy around what it's like to be in gaming as a woman. What you're not going to see in this podcast is trash talking or like specifically calling out a studio or specifically calling out a person and just tearing them down. It's absolutely cool for people to talk about things like difficult situations they've been in the past, but this is not live. I do not want people to go off and burn bridges inadvertently in the heat of the moment. So that is not the point of this podcast. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm here with my very first guest.
Hi, my name is Steph Bedford. I am currently a producer for Riot Games and good friends with Carrie. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. It's great to have you here.
Yeah.
So you are a producer at Riot.
I am.
What level producer are you?
Yeah, I'm a mid-career producer. So I'm a producer 2 by Riot's leveling system. Hopefully someday soon, senior producer. That's the goal. I've been in games just over 5 years. I did the math on the way over to your house, just to make sure that I got the numbers right. I started in games in 2017, and I was working as an IT project manager before then. So deep project management roots, but just over 5 years in games. So I'm officially a veteran of games now.
How did you make that jump from IT manager to video games? That seems like a big leap.
Yeah, it was. It's hard. It's hard to make the transition from other careers into games. And I think that is something that I know that I get people who reach out to me all the time to ask about. Luck. A big component is luck. I had a lot of transferable skills and was able to, put together a resume and interview well enough and sell those kind of transferable skills into the role that I eventually took, which was really helpful. And somebody took a shot on me. I didn't know anybody in games when I first started. So,
yeah, that could be really important. Like it's who you know in gaming generally that gets you in the door.
The networking component is so big, and part of what I'm really passionate about now is being that network for other people who are looking to get into games, especially people of marginalized genders or other identities. But yeah, I knew nobody, and basically just blind applied and threw resumes into what seemingly was the void until PlayStation called me. That was my first job, was with PlayStation. And yeah, someone took a chance on me and gave me my shot, and I haven't left games since. So,
well, yeah, you know me. We're actually friends in real life too. But I'm very passionate about bringing women and unrepresented genders into the gaming industry. So I'm very, very glad to hear that you are passionate about that as well.
Yeah, we share that.
I know a lot of other women that are really, really working very hard on that. So that's great. So you got into PlayStation. That's actually one of the places that I really, really was looking at when I came to LA. So that is cool.
Yeah. I was working for PlayStation in San Diego. So still West Coast. But I was down in the San Diego office working for what was then Worldwide Studios QA. Now I think is called PlayStation Studios QA. So because, in games, we rebrand ourselves every, 6 months into some new name so that we can have cool merch or a cool logo or a cool new jacket. So they've undergone some transitions since I've left, but it was an awesome experience. Had a great time while I was there. I was there for about 3 years. Got to travel, got to meet so many people, got to start really going to gaming conventions and volunteering and getting into it. It was awesome.
What was that like, going to gaming conventions and meeting fans for the first time?
Oh my gosh. Such an honor. Really such an honor. The first convention I got to work was the PlayStation experience. So PlayStation hasn't for a couple of years, but they used to have their own convention that they put on with all PlayStation games, first party, some second party, some third party titles. But so basically they took our entire studio and shipped us up to Anaheim and were like, work all of the booths. And it was incredible. That was my first experience. And there's nothing that bonds you to your coworkers, kind of like working a convention and being on your feet for 11 hours together, and the fans and the interactions and whatever title you're on. My first booth I got to work was Shadow of Colossus. And what an incredible game. And we got the devs showed up, and they were there from, I think, Blue Point, Japan. And it was just incredible.
So that was the reissue of Shadow of Colossus, right? The HD version.
The remake so they rebuilt the whole thing from the ground up.
Cool.
And it was really, really cool. And just getting to see, because it was an established game, an established IP, there was fans of it already who like know and love it. And having that kind of be the first title that I got to go work as like somebody representing the company and getting to interact with fans was awesome. Exhausting. It was like 4 days, and, surrounded by my coworkers. So it wasn't just, people I didn't know working the booth with me. But absolutely incredible. It's such an honor to get to interact with fans and players, and you're a fan too. So you just feed off that energy and you geek out together, and you're like, oh my gosh, this part was so great, and let me help you with this part. And oh my gosh, did you see that over there? And isn't this cool? And then they learn that you actually you're not just somebody working a booth, you actually are building the game. And then that level of like fandom goes up and increases. And one of the best things that PlayStation did for me was sending me to conventions and getting to like interact with people on the ground floor authentically. I just love it.
So let's talk about the darker side of conventions, though. I know I've been to gaming conventions before and all kinds of conventions. I've had people ask, oh, are you a booth babe? And things like that. Did you ever experience anything like that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think that still in the industry, we're not as progressive as like we like to pretend that we are. And people, like me, like you, the way we look, we are attractive, strong, confident women. And there is this assumption that like, oh, you were hired to come represent the game. You were hired as like, the diversity booth babe hired to draw people in, to look like, oh, it's just, not sweaty gamers or whatever, this like stereotype. And it's like, no, PlayStation writes my checks. They pay my bills. I am actively involved in the development of all of these titles. These are near and dear to my heart. This is me. Like, this is not something I'm putting on for the weekend and walking away from. But there's definitely that assumption. And the worst part about it is when you get people who are like, yeah, so you work for PlayStation, so prove it. Name 5 of their greatest hits. And you're just like, that's not what this is about. Like,
this is like the old cliche of, oh, you're a fan of Star Wars. Can you name like the 5 shows or the top 5 characters or something? Yeah, that is so cliche.
Yeah, and it totally happens. It totally happens. And you're just like, okay, that doesn't feel great. Thanks. No, this is what I do. And I am, capable. I was trained to do this. I'm a professional in this. Like, you don't need to talk down to me. This is my job, and I'm here because I love it, and it's important for people like me and people like you and, people who don't look like me to represent the game. But it's authentic. It's not fake. Like, I'm not a prop there. Like, I volunteered to be here. I'm giving my time. Like, I am excited to be here. Don't speak down to me like, you're just, some shitty booth babe. Like, that's not it.
What brought you into the gaming industry? Like, were you a gamer and you were interested in that, or what brought you in?
Yeah. I have kind of an interesting path. I didn't set out from the beginning to want to make games. I really fell hard into games in college, like as a profession. I always played games growing up. I mean, I remember.
What did you play growing up?
Oh my gosh. So many games. I'm going to out myself as like the nerdiest of gamers. I got my, Game Boy Color very early. Me and my dad fought over our Game Boy Colors. We had to both get one because we couldn't share. Very early Pokemon Red. Like, I remember just carrying around in the little light that so I could play it in the backseat of the car at night, driving around. Love it. Still love my Mew. It does actually boot up. I pulled batteries out and changed the corroded and everything and got it all out of my Game Boy Color just to see if it would boot. Recently in the last year or two, does. Loved my Game Boy. I had a PlayStation 2. I'm a big Kingdom Hearts fan. a lot of my like Slack pictures, but I think my professional picture on LinkedIn is like me with a Keyblade. It's great. I won't say it's a good game, but it's one of my favorite games. So it's Kingdom Hearts. It is what it is. Big nostalgia hit there. What else? Sly Cooper. Loved some Sly Cooper. Loved my early PlayStation games. So falling into that. I think my first MMO was Toontown Online from Disney.
Toontown.
So I'm a real gamer.
Okay.
I played a lot of like Disney MMO made for kids. You run around as like a toon. I think I was a rabbit. And then you fight the man. I think they're called like cogs or something like that. It's been so long.
To be honest, I've never heard of Toontown.
You're gonna have to look it up now. Yeah. It's ridiculous. It was the MMO for children, and I poured so much money into that game. It was so much pay to play too. It really was. Neopets, a lot of Barbie horse stuff. Loved me some good Barbie equestrian whatever. Insert whatever which one there. Yeah. But I didn't really grow up thinking I was going to make games. Loved games, loved board games, game night with my parents, always tried to draw them into games, but I'm an only child. So, being a girl gamer only child, I didn't have brothers to bring me into the gaming fold. My father wasn't really that big of a gamer. He had an Atari that he tried to hook me on. And I was just like, okay, Dad, this is weird. But it wasn't a thing. And early on, when my parents were trying to throw activities at me, trying to get me interested in something, horses was what stuck. So,
are you still into horses?
I'm the horse girl.
Well,
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm the horse girl. I have a horse in LA. Don't do it. If you're thinking about it, don't do it. Horses are the expensive hobby that you can't get out of. You think your Warhammer is expensive. You think you're I don't know, hockey is expensive. You think no, horses, I got you beat. I literally buy boots that are upwards of $600 to $800 to walk around in horse poop. It's not good. Don't do horses. But I do horses. And so I was going to be a professional equestrian. That's what I was on the road to.
That's quite a jump.
Yeah. I was on the road to professional equestrianism. I wanted to be an Olympic rider. I did nationals. I was competing, representing at the junior Olympic level. I've got medals, I've got titles, all this, everything. And then I was in college and I decided that maybe I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. It's a bit I don't know, you need a sponsor. You need someone who's going to pay the bills.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how's the money in equestrian events? That's
non-existent. Non-existent.
It's a true labor of love.
So I didn't set out to work in games. And I was in college doing professional writing, kind of going after it. I even took 6 months out of business school. That's what I ended up majoring in. I went to a business management program in the South. I was not on this coast. And yeah, somebody had to pay the bills with horses. I don't come from a really independently wealthy family. When you think about horses, you think about the Bill Gates of the world. And that was not my family. I'm an only child. I come from divorced parents, very middle income, enough that they got me started and they had enough to start to fund the dreams. But I was working in barns. I was mucking stalls. I was working my butt off for every lesson. I was not a poor kid, but I was a poor kid in relation to the rest of the equestrian community.
Do you feel like some of that work ethic that you developed there really helped you in your later career?
Totally. It's funny because on the surface, I don't think games and horseback riding have anything to do with each other. You're how do those skills transfer? But one of the biggest things that I try to coach people who want in the industry or who are trying to make a leap from somewhere else and are just really passionate about games is to think about how do those skills transfer and apply, and how can that relate to games, even if you were a shift manager at McDonald's, even if you were mucking stalls, even if you were a doctor or a circus performer or whatever. I've heard some wild stories. And yeah, I mean, that work ethic is really, really important. Working with animals who can't tell you what is wrong, you have to develop a lot of empathy and a lot of, deep communication skills that aren't verbal. You've got to look for a lot of signs. A lot of it is investing in something that is not going to immediately pay off either, which is the game dev cycle in a nutshell, right?
It's really fascinating to me that you said you're working with animals that can't tell you what's wrong, that you have to develop that empathy. And as a producer, I'm thinking those skills are really, really used and utilized. Wow, that's really cool. Do you have any insight there?
Yeah, it's vital. So a lot of being a producer is, yes, we ship things, and yes, we're managing, time and scope and budget and all of those things, but people are the biggest part of my job, which is why I love it so much, to be fair. I love people. And learning how to read people, understand and anticipate their needs before, they tell you that something is wrong, that they're hurting, that, thinking 3 steps ahead of like, okay, if their schedule looks like this, that means they're not going to have enough time. I've got to build float time in. I've got to make sure they're working on projects that motivate them. What are they interested in? Where do they want to grow in their career? Because I'm asking them to show up and give me their best every single day. And so how do I manage the conditions around their work environment and this professional environment to basically gamify them showing up and giving me their best work every day? And that is a huge component of it. And that is what I did with horses. It's like managing their best environment for their body, their physicality, their mental state. How do you create a routine in a program that develops the proper muscles that you can then, 3 years from now, train a move that you would never have been able to train a move without 3 years in the making. And dressage in particular is a sport that takes, if you're lucky and nothing goes wrong and the horse is perfect and talented and you're the right rider and there's this great combination. It takes 8 years to develop a horse from walk, trot, canter, basic, broken to Olympic level. And that is if all the stars align and everything goes right. And so you're investing, 8 years where you're showing up every day with that end goal in mind of what you're trying to make. And that's very much like making a game in so many ways, because you're investing in the little tiny features now, the little incremental growth, the how does, writing this one line build my game at the end of the day? How does this relate into the overall design mechanics? How does this further the narrative, further the plot? How does this tie into where the player is going to be 20 hours from now? And how does this get me to, a 6-year production cycle at the end where I have something to show for it? And I think that's so similar. And I didn't set out with that in mind when I was like, yeah, I'm going to go horses and then I'm going to go video games. So
I think you and I both know that most of us, including myself, that got into gaming and into the tech industry in general, we're not necessarily the best people person. I'm not the best extrovert or anything like that. So having somebody that has that level of empathy and can bring out the best and the best performance and has the best in mind for their team is absolutely essential. It's one of those qualities I look for in producers that can really bring, it's the difference between shipping and not shipping. Sometimes it's having a producer that has that kind of skill set. So that is super exciting and so deep that you really enhanced that from your time with animals.
Yeah. The horses have really helped build that skill set in a very interesting way, because again, they can't tell you hey, I'm having a bad day because I'm fighting with my partner at home, or hey, I'm having a bad day because I'm dealing with someone in my extended family, my extended life is going through something and I'm having to be their emotional support crutch, or hey, I'm struggling to pay my bills, or hey, I'm struggling physically because I'm dealing with chronic pain or whatever. Animals can't tell you that. And so you have to develop that, that sixth sense of being really curious and inquisitive and never taking anything at face value when it presents, because there's always something deeper behind it. And I love bringing the best out in whatever I'm doing. And that's why horses were so fun for me. And that's why people are so fun for me. And my team definitely calls me their their extrovert. Like they will literally. So I work with a team of writers right now, which are very much not known for being extroverts.
What kind of profession?
Yeah. So they're narrative.
Narrative. Okay.
Yeah. So my team is currently narrative, which I'm a weird producer too.
So creatives.
Yeah.
Creatives,
but not extroverted creatives. The writers and editors who want to go sit in a coffee shop and don't bug me or don't want to necessarily be at work, don't necessarily want to be in the bullpen with all of it. They need their quiet time. They need their creative time. And so I am their extrovert in many ways. We have I had a writer tell me, we went to a happy hour hosted by another discipline over the last year. And this writer straight up told me, they were I felt comfort because I knew you were going to be there and I knew you would handle it. If there was a situation where we wanted to talk to somebody or we wanted to who's that? Let's get to know them. I knew you would introduce me. I knew you wouldn't leave me hanging. I knew you would bring me in. I felt comfort because basically I was their designated extrovert, to bring them in and to help them form connections and help them form their network. And again, make them the best version of themselves. And so I take that very seriously in my work. And it comes out in that way where I get teased for it.
So the old idiom, you can lead a horse to water.
Yes.
I do a lot of mentoring for women in gaming and for women in leadership roles that are just starting out, especially as managers. And I can almost sit back and wait on the question. The one question nearly every single woman asks me after about 6 to 8 weeks of being a manager or a leader for the first time is, Carrie, how do you get the guys to even do what you tell them to do? Because a lot don't do it. And I've talked to a lot of my mentors, my male identifying leaders, that this is not something that's ever crossed their mind. They say something, people do something. It's not something that you have to frame in a way to get someone to do something. Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, so much so. So every single person I've ever worked with is unique and has, again, what motivates them, how to get them to best do their work, what they're going to listen to, what they're not going to listen to, how you push and pull and set the parameters up that it goes the way you want. And being a woman in games is hard. There's no two ways about it. The industry is better than it was even 5 years ago when I stepped foot in it. But it's not as good as it could be. And there are times where I speak and I ask, and I have to ask, and I have to ask, and then I have to grab the carrot out, or then I have to grab the whip, or then the horse metaphor. But But there is incentivization that has to sometimes happen that I know my male colleagues don't have to employ. And a lot of it is, for me, where I found success. Building that personal relationship is so crucial to manipulating people into doing what I want them to do, or doing, what I think is the best outcome or the best way forwards.
Right. And manipulating has a lot of negative connotations in the language, but really motivating is what you're talking about here.
Yeah.
And I know there's, like you said, every individual has their own key to motivating them, whether it's praise or money or whatever.
Totally. Totally. There's some people that I've dealt with that are very hard though. It's not as easy as okay, do this thing and you'll get a raise, or do this thing and you'll get credit, or do this thing and very key incentive here. And that's difficult. There are some people that I've worked with that really are hard, are just hard. I think some of the most difficult people I've worked with actually aren't on the team that I currently produce. They are wonderful individuals. And I think that that's because I've invested so much personal time in them as humans and gotten to know them and spent that time learning them.
Yes, so much time.
Much time.
Days in the gaming industry are absolutely not clock in, clock out, 9 to 5.
No.
This is...
No.
Yeah.
But I had some tech artists that I worked with at a previous company, and they were difficult. They were just difficult. They just did whatever they wanted. And, there was, as a producer, we have tools at our disposal, whatever methodology you're running, hard project management fundamentals. of how you track work, how you prioritize work, when you make commitments, how long it takes work to get done, how you shift from A to B, what time, how to measure time loss, how to measure all these things. And they were just a tough group of people who they would tell me one thing and then they squirrel and get distracted and do something else. And I'm just like, guys, what is going on? And it's a lot of, with them in particular, which was challenging, it's trying to understand their values and why they're making the decisions that they're making, and trying to really index hard into empathy of man, I'm frustrated. You aren't meeting your commitments. You're not doing what you're telling me you should do. You're not doing what I think from my point of view. So let me put myself where you're standing and let me really try to understand why you're making the decisions that you're making. Because that curiosity, all the way back to horses, is you must be doing this for a reason. You're not doing it to spite me. You're not doing it to frustrate me. You're not doing it for a negative reason. So I've got to figure out why your version of reality doesn't match mine and why you're making the decisions that you're making. And when you can come at it from a curiosity standpoint, you sort of humanize yourself as a woman to people that sometimes have difficulty viewing women as people. And when you can start to, again, index into that personal relationship, that curiosity, that empathy, that why are you doing this? Why are you making that decision? What is important to you? And help me understand why this is important to you. Then you can kind of meet them halfway and start to explain, I understand why you want to change this thing. You're getting a lot of pressure for the community. This is something that's a passion project of yours. You're really invested. But I also need this because of these values. And this is the pressure that I'm under to deliver these things. And, if we can't meet these commitments, help me explain, help me advocate for why we're going to do this stuff over here so that I can go fight the battle for you, so that you can stay heads down, committed to the work that you're doing. And I can help to be that buffer for you and to be your advocate and to be your knight and to be, your help, because that's what it's about.
I love how you phrase that about figuring out what their reality is versus what your reality is, and trying to merge those worlds together. That's really, really deep. I love that phrasing and that viewpoint. I've never really thought about it quite that way before. So that's some brilliant insight, I think.
Yeah. I think it comes from, we as women walk a different path in the world every day than other people, whether that's different genders, different expressions, different race or sexuality or whatever. We're all walking a path that is our reality, but that doesn't mean that there isn't other values, and values are such a big part of why we do what we do, and understanding where a person is coming from, because it's not just a split, decision that they've made, right? So trying to merge the two, and being in a marginalized group often gives you this advantage of having language to talk about different viewpoints and privilege and why you see things the way you do and what your reality is different from somebody else's reality. And it's a gift of, being a minority, that oftentimes if you can tap into that identity, you then begin to develop a language to help bridge the gap with other people.
All right, let's get difficult here.
Oh yeah, let's do it. Let's do
it. You've talked a lot about the empathy and understanding others that you had to develop to be a successful leader and woman in gaming. Let's flip it around a little bit. As you said, as an underrepresented population, as a minority in the gaming industry, we've had to learn different routes. We've had to learn ways to navigate that others just haven't.
Totally.
How have you managed with your own leadership in different places that may not have developed those kind of skill sets when they were trying to lead you?
Yeah, it's hard. It's really, really hard to deal with leaders who have never walked a mile in your shoes. And I have never had a woman boss. I've been in the industry 5 years, and I've never had a woman boss. I've had women skip levels, and different women who have been mentors, coaches, figures for me in many ways, guiding lights and people I look to, including yourself, to be very honest. And a lot of the labor that I have to undertake is educating leaders about what I am seeing, what I am feeling, how it's hard to be me and it's hard to be lower than me in many ways. And that's not a small amount of labor. It's not a small undertaking.
Would you say that's part of the managing up skill?
Totally.
Yeah.
I've had some really wonderful men above me who have taken the time to listen and have been open when I have pointed out either their privilege or their blind spot. I was at Cloud Imperium Games when the news with Blizzard broke. And that was kind of the last really huge upswelling of, politics in games, as some people might call it. I don't know. I call it my reality. Like it feels like politics. It feels very charged, but for some of us, that's just our day to day. And it's what we live with. And it's the tax we pay to stay in games. And that was really hard. That was a really, really hard period because I was on a team where I was the most senior woman in my US production team. And there were 2 other women producers beneath me, much younger in their career. And there was such a duty because I was also the women ERG lead for the US. And I felt such a duty of care towards women in the company, having to process and relive their own trauma at the hands of gaming media at that point. And work just sort of was business as usual. And that felt so difficult to me. And it was a great moment of education for me and my leadership at the time, because I was like, you can't not make a statement. Your silence is complicit. And by you not making a statement, by you not using your power, your authority, your privilege, I risk so much every time I speak out, and I have to relive my trauma, and I have to do this labor, and I have to be there for women. But I have to. It's not optional. That's part of who I am and what it means to be a woman in games. And the fact that you can just business as usual, you're not even realizing how blind you are. And you have a duty of care to the women beneath you, the women around you, the women who work for you, to say something, to say anything, to be part of the conversation, period. And it was hard. God, it was really, really hard. It was a really, really hard time. And thankfully, I had really good leadership who, when I basically checked them, because I was furious, I was mad. There's no 2 ways about it. It's hard to not be mad. Yeah. And that anger is so that it doesn't happen to the people behind me. And it's well-placed anger, but it's still anger and it's still valid. They really like, oh God, oh wait, like, you're right. I risk less when I open my mouth. And this is my duty to care for these people. And I need to say something. And even if I don't know what to say, it's important to try. It's important to be a part of that conversation. And they were really great and really leaned in that moment and stepped up. And it was so wonderful to see, but it was not a small amount of labor on me to have to push, my leadership and that managing upwards into doing what is right and understanding that, like, the women in your company are not having a good time right now. Like, none of us are okay. And it is on you to lead from the front as a non-marginalized person and be invested in this. So, and they were great. They were great about it, to be fair. They were absolutely lovely, but it wasn't their idea. And that's still hard. It still has to be driven from us in so many ways. And we're all so tired. We're all so tired. And so I hope that it continues to get better. I hope that non-marginalized identifying people start to stick up for the cause. We need allies more than we need, almost about anything. We need people who want to come see from our point of view and amplify our voices and provide care to those people. So I hope it continues to get better. It has gotten better. It's getting better, hopefully, but it sucks.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen it getting better for sure.
Yeah.
I came up in the tech industry, in the non-gaming industry, but I was in the tech industry in the Midwest in the from 99 through 2016. I was in the Midwest. And, people make fun of it. They act like it's all a cliche or whatever. They're like, oh, you're just memeing. But no, I literally sat in meetings, was absolutely ignored.
Yeah.
Made statements that were needed for the project, like critical things.
Yeah.
That they would literally sit there, nod along, dismiss the idea, and then somebody on the other side of the table would say the same thing and get credit for it.
Oh my gosh, wow, that's such a great idea, Bob. Wow, how did we not think of that? You're amazing.
Yeah.
Here, have a promotion. Here, have a whatever.
And it's one of those things that, when I was younger, that really, really made me angry.
Yeah.
And it's like you felt unseen as a person. You felt unimportant and othered,
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, they must really just hate me. And it's not malice. It's just complete ignorance and blind spots in most cases. I don't think in my professional life, I don't think I've ever met a coworker that I would just say was just outright evil.
No.
It's like they're not there to be bad.
No.
They just don't understand.
They've never had to live in your experience. And so they don't know what it's like to walk as a woman in this world and watch men get preferential treatment or things that are okay for, one group not be okay for another group. Or, I would agree with you. I've never met somebody who is just outright like the worst, like a terrible person. But there's so much ignorance. There's so much ignorance. And again, that ignorance can only be combated with education. That takes a lot of energy. And it's hard enough to just exist. And some days, the tank is empty and there's no energy to give towards education. But it's so desperately needed. It's so desperately needed. And I don't know. Even now, I know that when I go back to work next week, I will be fighting the good fight for representation. I will be amplifying voices on my team. I will be sticking up and saying the unpopular opinion in the room. And that comes with a weight and a burden, and it's hard. And it doesn't stop. There are marginalized people fighting the good fight in games every day in every studio. And they are still marginalized, and it's still hard. And so I don't know. I wish gamers knew that. Like there are people trying so hard every day to do the right thing and to do the thing that gets us more representation and allows a woman of color to be the hero and, allows us to do more than tropes, allows us to push farther and tell authentic, true stories and ship LGBTQI people publicly and elevate them. And it's hard. It's not easy.
Yeah, no, I mean, some of the differences are really small. It's things that most people would never think about. Like after our return to office, even after the pandemic, I was hearing my coworkers say, oh yeah, I got up at 9:30, I threw a hat on, a shirt, I walked in, I drove to the office, it took me 15 minutes, and I'm fine. I'm like, yeah, I got up at 7, I did my hair and makeup, I ate something quickly, I took care of a couple other things I needed to take care of. That finally got me to work at 9:30, finally, or 10 even. And so you're talking a 2 or 3 hour chunk of your day that some of your coworkers don't have to sacrifice.
No.
And that adds up quickly. Like you said, your tank can get empty very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And just through sheer ignorance, people will not even think about that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's even in the way the games we play with ourselves of okay, do I go on camera in a meeting?
Yep.
Do I go on camera in a meeting? And then I sit there and do the mental math of like, okay, I want to be present. I want to be visible. I want to be there. But my male coworkers don't have to be taken seriously, to be given the floor, to be, allowed to take up space. And then, do I look presentable? Do I look professional? Is there anything in my background that somebody is going to comment on, or that somebody's going to make a whatever that's going to detract from my point? Am I allowed to be emotional in a meeting? And if I'm on camera and I'm emotional, good, bad, whatever, is that going to be weaponized against me? And I have literally had people go to my manager and give feedback that Stephanie looked upset across the quad, on, at the studio, across the way. I saw her from 500 feet away, but she looked upset in the way that she was walking, and then she went and talked to her team. Is that going to be a problem? And that is feedback. And that is the like balancing act we do every day of like, I want to be visible. I want to take up space. I want to be there. I want my seat at the table so that everybody who comes behind me gets a seat at the table. But also like, wow, is anything I do going to be treated with, kindness and empathy and curiosity and benefit of the doubt and positivity? Or are you going to find ways to make anything I do fit whatever agenda you're trying to sell about me, or the narrative you're trying to sell about me?
Right. And I mean, this is the strength of diverse voices on a team. We bring a perspective that just is not there otherwise. It's a voice that was sadly lacking and missing for the first 15 to 20 years of game development. Yeah. The studios should have never gotten to the point that they were at. No. And if they had those diverse voices, they wouldn't have. Yeah. Especially in leadership roles, mentoring roles, things like that. We can make games. We can make them well. We can ship games on time, in depth, with amazing stories. Better. We can make it better if we're there. Right. We can point out the thing that's going to get you roasted in the media because you decided to like literally like make a woman a prop to somebody else's story. We will point that out. We will tell you like, because we feel that, we see that, we know that. And like, listen to us. Just listen to us. We promise we're not trying to make your product worse. We're genuinely trying to make it better. Yeah. It's still an uphill battle every day. Every day it's still an uphill battle, but it's worth it. It's worth it. And even on the worst of days, it's worth it to watch more baby game devs come in and just take up space and be loud and be present and, I don't know, feel entitled to take up that space. Nothing makes me happier. I love bringing women into gaming and engineering specifically because I'm an engineering manager. Of course. I've done a ton of recruiting. I've done more recruiting in the last year so busy. Than I think I've ever done in my entire life. So busy. I either was involved with the hiring of or hired over 40 software engineers. Mm. And that was well over 100 interviews, going through thousands of applications. Yeah. Out of all of those engineers that I ended up hiring last year, I had 2 women apply. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. 2 women applied. And that's painful. So depressing. Painful. I went on LinkedIn and I saw and cold messaged hundreds of women. And
I saw you put the call out. I saw it. I tried to help.
I have my own premium LinkedIn account that I pay for so that I can cold message people. Yeah. And just be like, hey, come. You ever think about working in gaming? Join me. It's like, I see you're an engineer. Please come in. And it's such an uphill battle. Yeah. Yeah. But the only way we can change the player community and the way it behaves is at the source. And totally. I firmly believe that. It's like, how can we ask our players to be socially responsible and to not be so quote unquote toxic? I know we don't like that word anymore, but quote unquote toxic. Yeah. If there's any of that left at the source, at the studio level. Yeah. So, I can't encourage women enough. We need people to apply. Yeah. And there's so much complexity about that. So,
when I was acting as the US lead for the Women's ERG, one of the things that we were really, really passionate about is partnering with our HR partners, because this should not be new to anybody who is interested in, gender in the workplace. But women or, non-men identifying folks, right? Non-binary, women, whatever, oftentimes won't apply for a role if they don't meet 100% of what is on that role. And there's like a statistic that like men will apply if they meet like 60% of the
less. I think it's like 40%.
Yeah, the audacity. Like I crave having the audacity of a man seeing a job position that he is 40% qualified for and shooting my shot. Like, and it's hard. It's hard. And I know this. I know this. I have this knowledge, and it's hard for me to act on it. Let alone, again, little baby devs who are so early in their career looking at some of these job postings that frankly can be exclusionary and can really gatekeep our industry and not feeling comfortable to even shoot their shot. And I don't know, let the game company turn you down. Don't turn yourself down. Don't reject yourself for the role out the gate. But it's hard.
And part of that, honestly, is educating our talent acquisition folks as well, because there are, I said I look for thousands of resumes and things, but they went through tens of thousands.
Yeah.
If we put an entry-level job out, it
gets inundated.
Yeah.
Inundated.
It's like half the world applies.
Totally.
And whether they're qualified or not, they apply.
Yep.
And we really have to educate our talent acquisition folks with that. Yeah.
It seems like, so everybody's, very surface level answer to the complex problem of how do we get more minority devs into games is, well, we need more, entry level positions. And that's a great step, but it's not this like magic pill either, because like you're talking about, you put an entry level position out there and they are highly competitive. I mean, we're talking hundreds to thousands of people trying to apply, and the sheer amount of like time investment to weed through all those resumes, to find that person, to find the right person is very hard. And gaming is an industry that is really sexy right now. Like it's very sexy. It's very hot. It's very, oh my gosh, everybody wants to work in games. And so, yes, we need a pipeline. We need entry-level folks, but we also need the rest of the pipeline in place to mentor, to bring these people up, to give them a safe work environment. Because, all the way back at the very beginning of our interview, I was like, oh, I'm 5 years into games. I'm a veteran. Minority people burn out in 5 years out of games.
Yeah, you'll have to fact check me on the statistic, but I think it's like over half of women leave engineering in the first 5 years.
Yeah, and it's not strictly just engineering. It is minority devs working. There is that terrible like, I'm a veteran, but it's true because of the massive amount of like microaggressions and just hard day-to-day that we deal with. In 5 years, it's a lifetime. And if we can't protect those people, we have no business bringing them in to burn them back out of the industry and to churn the industry. And then, you get the situation that you were probably in where you're looking for either mid to senior to whatever kind of engineers, later career, and you can't find those people. Yeah, they don't exist because
we was completely changed.
Yeah, we've burnt them out. They don't exist because they haven't been allowed to exist in the industry long enough to get the experience that then you can bring somebody on as senior. And so what you're left with is a pool of white dudes, right? Like, and that sucks because that's not what we want to hire. We don't want to hire a singular voice. We want to hire diverse candidates who bring a whole host of experiences so our product is better. But we burn them. We burn them out of the industry, and we hire them in and then we churn them out.
I know one of the things that we're really trying to work on and figure out is, how do I get to these women and underrepresented populations before they burn out? Really, before they get to the industry itself. It's one of the things that I wanted to really start reaching out to the universities and the internship programs and things like that, letting people know there are places for them. There is hope. There are other women in the industry that are willing to take their hand and give them that hand up that they need. Yeah. and I'm not saying that not because they're not capable.
No.
But literally.
That protection means so much.
Yeah.
Like it really does. And it's not because, I'm a strong, independent woman who don't need nobody, but like, boy, would I love a protector at times. Like, boy, would I love to have had a woman manager who went and fought for me, who protected me, who guided me, who, somebody more senior who's walked a few steps farther than me in their career and can help me not have to make the same mistakes. And so it's not that they're not capable, because there are the sheer force of will women exist in this industry. But man, wouldn't it be nice to protect some of the people behind us? Yeah.
I know you mentioned it earlier, that people are reaching out all the time about how should I get into gaming?
Always.
But what would you tell a woman that might be in college right now that has her eyes set on gaming? Like, she may be on, one of our games or somebody else's games or whatever, and just be super passionate about it. What would you give her for advice, and what would you caution her against?
Yeah. So I'm going to say something spicy.
Uh-oh.
Maybe it'll make the cut. Maybe it won't. I am not a huge believer in the game dev programs that are out there in colleges and universities. I think that is a way for us to, really highly specialize into game dev skills. And the most valuable thing somebody can bring in for me is not their game dev experience, but it's the rest of their lived world experience. And yes, you need those technical skills. You need to, for me as a producer, you need to know project management. Like, yes, I'm a believer in the PMP. I'm a believer in the CapM. I'm a believer in, your CSM and your certifications and your hard, like, production project management skills. Give me, I love. But also, my horses is what allows me to sell me as who I am as an individual and why you need me, because nobody else brings that. My time in my hobbies and the things that I invest in are what make me uniquely positioned and the best candidate that you could look for, because I'm going to bring you something that nobody else has. And so for me, it's why those game dev, universities and collegiate programs and some of the things that are, trying to basically put you into this game dev certified box are less attractive to me than somebody who has forged their own path and has all of this outside experience. And so I don't want somebody whose entire being is just, I'm going to make a game and I'm a dev and this is my whole life, because I think that's how we get really derivative games. And that's how we're not pushing our industry forwards. And so those are very, very attractive for somebody who's like, I really want to make games. Oh, there's this program. Oh, they're going to, help me. And oftentimes some of those programs don't place you well. Like, it's a very hard competitive industry. And again, something on your resume that's really important is, cool, you went to the game dev school, you and 500 other graduates, but what else you got for me? How are you going to stand out? And if that's all you've invested in, you've got no way to stand out. So don't drop those things that are not useful on the surface. Make those connections with people. And there's so many jobs in dev.
Yeah.
We represent engineering and production, and like my little minor in narrative as a narrative producer, but like, you can do anything in working games. There's a whole host of jobs out there.
It's almost like making movies.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so many things. There's audio.
We'd be here all day if we tried to name them.
Yeah,
We'd be here all day.
I talked to, I had somebody contact me yesterday, actually, that is a professional musician and was wanting to know if I knew anybody that does the music on Valorant.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I don't personally know, but
I'll find you somebody.
I'll find you somebody. And it's it's so diverse, the amount of types of jobs.
I know. Plug for our Riot music team. They're so good.
Absolutely amazing.
They're so good. Like, the Riot music group, both. So there's some interesting complexities to our Riot music team. Obviously, there's like the game music teams, but then we have the Riot music group that is like the KDA group and the Pentakill and the whatever. There's a ton of audio musicians, like the people who did like the Porter song last year when we did Star Guardian. Like, you can be a composer and come work in games. You can come be an engineer and work in games. You can be like me and just want to help people and be really good at planning and come work in games.
You can be a data scientist.
You can be a data scientist.
That does nothing but crunch numbers and find patterns, because that's huge. That's a huge part of what we do.
Yeah, modeling and data science. That's actually where I started. My first position was technically a business intelligence analyst.
Ooh.
So, which is not really what I was doing. It was about a third of my job. But oh my gosh. And then the data is so ripe because it's tech. So there's so much good data there. So if you're into data, there's room for you there. If you are a historian and you're really good at documentation, there's room for you.
There's librarians.
There's librarians. There's historians.
Yeah.
There's, again, you've got the sort of stereotypical game dev jobs of like, I'm an artist or I'm a programmer, but like that is like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
It's the tip of the iceberg. And so I guess all the way back to your question, now that I've wandered away from it, is like, there's room for you. There is space for you. You just got to find it. And there's so many different flavors. And I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up in games. Like, I'm a narrative producer today, but I don't know what I'm going to be 6 months from now. I don't know what I'm going to be 5 years from now. Like, I have some aspirational goals. I have things I'd maybe like to do, but that doesn't have a title associated to it necessarily. It's bigger than that. And you can kind of make your own role in games too. You can be special and the thing that they need and them just not know it.
One of the things that I always tell people is I want to see passion in their cover letter. When they put your skills in your resume, that's great. But I want to know why you in your cover letter. I want to know why you're applying to me. Yeah. It's like, that's super important. People tend to write one cover letter and blast it out to everyone. And then like Mad Lib style drag and drop, like company name, insert here, hiring manager, insert here. I would really like to work for this game because pick 3 adjectives. Like, people definitely play Mad Libs with their cover letters. And I hated cover letters, and everybody hates cover letters. So I went to a business school, right? Like, I've got a business management degree. I went to a really good business school. I went to the Terry College of Business at the University of Georgia, like a very good program. Yeah. And like, I don't know that they taught me how to write a good cover letter. No, they didn't. And so it's been my time through the industry that I have found a way to be really proud of my cover letter in a template, in a form that I feel really good about, and I coach other people to use. But your cover letter should not repeat anything that is on your resume. Like, absolutely. This is your first chance to sell yourself, right? And so that real estate is so precious. It should not be just relisting everything that is on your resume. Like, I did read your resume. I promise. And so I don't need you to relist your experience and your certifications and your whatever. Like, that's not what a cover letter is for. And if you're not making the most of it, like, it is such a wasted opportunity. And they suck. They suck to write. Nobody has a good time. It's not necessarily fun. But like, if you can develop that muscle, a good cover letter can literally put you to the front of the line and make me want to hire you, make me want to invest in you. And I love helping people find that in their cover letter. That's very cool. And I think it goes back to demonstrating the amount of empathy that you have for others and trying to bring the best out of them. It's like coaching on this cover letter is so cool. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And again, it should be all of the like unique you. Yeah. I don't want the stamping, I've done a game jam and I've worked in this. Do you put horses in your cover letter?
Sometimes, yeah. I've put horses in my cover letter. I have put my D&D tabletop experience in my cover letter. I'll put anything. If I think it is relevant and I can spin it, I'm like, I'm cool. You want to talk to me? It's going in. It's going in. Do
you ever do miniatures for D&D?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I do miniatures. I've got a bunch I need to go paint. I've been so bad about that.
That's awesome.
I've been so bad about that.
I think you are outing yourself as like the geek gamer girl.
Oh yeah, no, I am. I kind of look normie, but there's a deep fandom that runs through, like for sure. Especially because being a narrative producer, I'm very invested in storytelling, and like tabletop is collective storytelling. Yeah. And that is the best way I sell, things like D&D or Pathfinder or whatever system you want to play. It is collective storytelling, and there's no better way to develop empathy for people than playing in a tabletop group. And there's been so many times where I have referenced that as like, so tell me about a time that you had to get a group of people to come together on a goal, and how did you do this? And I can literally go, okay, so I was playing D&D and we had to go fight this monster. And how did I get all of the other player characters to adapt to my idea? Well, I set out the risks and I made a plan, and it's production, right?
Right.
You're playing D&D, but it's production skills. Or, it's you building communication. It's you building empathy. It's
like running a gaming clan or a raid team or anything like that in an MMO.
Totally. Yeah. If you're into those things, you can take those skills and transfer it into your professional life. They're there. You're building those skills.
I know somebody who, I'm not going to name the game, but it was a space game that had a large economy.
Yep.
And
what could it be?
Yeah, they actually built their career out of the connections that they made and the skills that they developed by running the accounting for the corporation in this game.
Amazing.
And it's absolutely crazy. I love the diversity in gaming. I ran a poll on LinkedIn actually last year sometime and said, would you rather be in gaming or the movie industry? Because let me tell you, when I came to LA,
everybody wanted to be in the movies.
I was certain I was going to be a director. I was like, I want to direct movies.
Hell yeah.
But but gaming is in my heart. I've been in gaming since second grade. That's a whole other story. Yeah. But the diversity there, the roles that are there, I truly think that games are the future of entertainment.
Me too.
I am 100% behind that philosophy.
Me too. The interactive part of the medium is so crucial to why I think it's so compelling for a lot of people. And games are gamifying things has become really popular in tech and in other industries, but that notion of it finding the fun and it being fun and collective, and you can find a game for anybody. I mean, whether it's, your mom playing Candy Crush or Solitaire to, a deep narrative experience put out by, PlayStation or Xbox, or, something like you want to lead a clan and you want to have a community, or, you just want to play puzzle games, or you're into something that's mindless, or really something that allows you to inhabit a point of view you never would have done. There's so much that games can give us. And
it's one of the things I really love that games in the last 15 years or so have really not only had women in the games as characters, but had us in the narrative of it. Because it's one thing to just copy paste. They used to just take the male body, shrink it down, put long hair on it, and be like, "Ta-da!" And they wouldn't change the narrative. They wouldn't change anything around it. Like the Mass Effect series, really mad. It just changed everything on the narrative side.
I will say, I'm still mad that we call her femship. That the default is male. I will die on this hill. I'm still mad that we call her femship. I mean, I get it. We have to call her something. She's awesome. She's great. But I take so much delight and pleasure when I read, internal documents where we talk about the player, and the player is a woman, and we say she as the player. There is nothing that brings me greater delight than reading that. And it sucks because it still always catches me that, default is male. But we're trying. We're making progress. It's happening. I see it more and more. And there's something really... I love that. I love it.
It's if given the option, I know plenty of women that play male characters in games and plenty of men that play female characters. I'm a little weird in that I generally will only play the female characters in games.
Yeah.
So even in my own games, I only play the women in Valorant, which is
nice.
It's really limiting to me. It's probably why I'm not great at it. But
it's okay. I love you, but Valorant is not my jam.
Yeah, I know.
Shooters.
I know nothing about MOBAs.
I'm so bad at shooters.
The things I don't know about League of Legends are shocking, considering that I work there. So
okay, you don't have to. That's why they have my team around. So
I've been playing FPS shooters since Wolfenstein 3D came out. I'm gonna really date myself here, but I was in college when Wolfenstein 3D came out, and probably one of the highlights of my geek career was John Romero got a hold of me on Twitter about 6 months ago and like was talking to me, and I'm like, and I'm telling John, I'm like, look, John,
are you perceiving me right now?
I'm like, do you understand how big of an impact you had on my life? Yeah. And it blew my mind.
Yeah.
I don't know a whole lot about John's like personal life or anything like that, but just the work that he did had a huge impact on me and led to my FPS game that I'm on now.
Yeah. And just think about how many people you're doing that for. Like that's I don't know, in the hardest, toughest days, which there are still too many of them.
Yeah.
There are still too many days where I'm just like mad, frustrated, or just like, can someone listen to me, please? Like, I promise I'm doing the right thing. Knowing that, like, you are making a difference. And games make a difference, make a crazy, impactful, profound difference. And that, like, I can guarantee at some point you're going to have a Carrie who's like, do you know what Valorant did for me? Like, do you know what that game did for me? Like, I'll get teary. Like, I'll cry about it just, like, thinking about it. Because, like, it means so much. And I hope that more and more of those people are women identifying people who go, you have no idea what you did for me.
I'm trying not to reference specific people or industries a lot, but I want to plug my skip level boss, Anna Donlin, on Valorant.
God,
Anna
is so cool.
She's an absolute legend. So cool. And she told me a story one time because I asked her, as my follower count goes up on social media, as people are looking up to me and as a mentor, you have to deal with that imposter syndrome. You have to be like, why me? What have I done?
Yeah.
I struggled through this industry just like everybody else, and I made my own mistakes and things like that. And she told me a story about she went to a conference, and afterwards, a bunch of the women in the audience came up to her and she said, what can I do for you? What can I do for you to make the most difference, to help you? And they looked her right in the eye and they said, you just need to exist. Yeah. You need to be you. You need to exist. That's it. That's all they asked, was exist.
I love it.
And that profound. That was profound. And it changed how I saw myself in this industry. It changed why I wanted to do some things. I wanted to find a way to reach other women then in an effective way. Yeah. I tried to start Discord groups. That fell apart.
It's hard.
It's very hard.
It's hard and it's time consuming. And again, you only have so many spoons to give at the end of the day. It's hard.
So just not thinking that anything would come of it. I threw out on Twitter, it's like, I'd really like to do a podcast on women in games. And over 300 professional women.
I saw, and I'm so honored that you let me be your inaugural woman. Oh, thank you. But I can't wait. I can't wait to hear from them. I can't wait to hear from.
There's going to be so many amazing voices.
All of them, because they are all important and different and special and needed. I need every single one of those 300 women to exist. So there's more and more, and that resonates with me really hard. You just have to exist. You have to be there.
From narrative to engineers to leaders to founders of studios got a hold of me, to people in different parts of the world got a hold of me.
I love it.
We are absolutely going to have an amazing time on this podcast.
It's
I can't wait to hear some of these voices.
Yeah.
I have to think that Riot now is so different than Riot of 15 years ago.
Yesteryear.
And we're very lucky to walk in the path that other women blazed before us. And
they laid their skin down for us so that we could keep going
so that we
forward.
Could do that. And there are other places and other companies that are going through problems right now too.
Yeah.
And hearing from some of these women that are going through it daily and especially in other parts of the world.
Yeah. The global game dev community is fantastic. And, and getting to put myself outside of my bubble and realize just how broad and expansive and the fights that these women are fighting in other parts of the world to be heard, to be seen, like, gives me very little to complain about, even, again, on my worst days. It's like, I have to stay here. I have to keep fighting so that they can fight, so that we can all fight, because it's astounding. And like, we're very privileged, as you say. Like, don't get me wrong, Riot's not perfect. No studio is perfect. No studio is perfect. And game dev isn't perfect. So there are things that happen in every studio. If you don't think that we're talking about your studio, we are talking about your studio. It happens everywhere. It's everywhere, and it hasn't stopped. Riot is not excluded from that as some kind of
keep fighting
paradise, but we fight. We fight, and we are trying, and it is better than it was. And I know there are people like me, and there are people like you fighting the fight and doing the work and standing up for what is right and being visible every day. And that makes a difference. So, yeah. I'm so excited for you. I'm just so excited.
Is there anything you want to plug before we wrap up here?
What do I want to plug? No. Do I want to plug something?
I think you should all go to StephyB's Twitter.
You can
follow her.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter if you'd like. You can keep up with all my shenanigans on Twitter. I am also out on LinkedIn. You can find me, I think I'm full Stephanie Bedford on LinkedIn. My Twitter handle currently is Lady Smalls with a Z, because I am Riot Lady Smalls. But I don't put Riot in my handle, so I'm a little harder to find. I'm a little undercover. But get into narrative. We need more storytellers. We need more narrative people. So get into narrative. I love my narrative babies. I love narrative so much. I love storytelling. And production. If you need anything and you need a friend, you need a woman who's in production, hit me up.
Same for engineering. If you need somebody in engineering that you just want to talk to, I'm here. I listen to, I read everything on there. I'm a bit obsessive about it.
Yeah. So
thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. This is so great. And I'm so excited. I'm so honored. So I can't wait to hear from everybody else.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.